The new Grand Tour Special, A Massive Hunt, has been released, so please watch it before this video. This is the first of the fourth series of the Grand Tour focusing on cars. And the difference in the cars was almost as massive as the hunt itself. Jeremy had his four-wheel drive V8 Bentley Continental. Richard bought an all-wheel drive Ford Focus RS and James got an amazingly reliable Caterham 310R. He explained it is a bit of a faff getting in admittedly, but once you are in the rewards are enormous. They started their journey in France, except it wasn't France, it was the little island in the Indian Ocean called Reunion. The trio loved their cars and the roads. They then had a drag race on the, as Jeremy puts it, engineering masterpiece.
Well, they got a better start.
Second, I'm rowing it through as quickly as I can. I am in front.
It's only 152 horsepower.
Now time to deploy the speed and power.
Bit late on that shift.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Stay. Oh God, damn it!
I'm losing. I'm the first person to lose on this road.
But it all went downhill from there. They got their challenge and figured they should go to Madagascar. James remembered that his friend told him the roads in Madagascar were the worst roads in the world. After some bickering, they agreed to modify their cars and take a ferry to Madagascar. They landed in the port of Tamative and James pulled up first in his barely modified Caterham. All he had done was give it bigger wheels and some lights on the roll cage. Jeremy then arrived in a Bentley from hell. It had a winch, armor plating to protect the underside, lights from a motorcycle so he could fit 2 snorkels, 4 chunky tires, some new brakes, moved the brake and fuel lines further in the car to protect them, and completely replaced his air suspension, which he somehow did in 2 days. Richard had gone a little bit too far and had transformed his fast little Ford into a tank. By adding an external roll cage, a black paint job, a few sculls and uninventing the wheel. After looking at the cars, more bickering and figuring out where to go, they were on their way. The Bentley and Caterham survived the pothole-filled roads, but the Ford tank had issues with the little plastic wheels holding the tracks on the axle. However, Richard fixed his poor little Focus, Jeremy named his car the MFB, and James was getting blinded by dust. They spent a night in a hotel, and the next morning got cracking, heading north to find the pirates' treasure. With no issues at all, they found a ferry that took them from the modern Madagascar with tarmac to the old muddy Dark Ages. The roads were terrible, but the cars with their new mods were not even breaking a sweat. The only problem was the big puddles they had to drive through were filled with human excrement, and James didn't have the best protection. Nor did Hammond have the best tracks for this environment, so they used the beach that was next to them instead, which went brilliantly, until the Ford's front left track couldn't take the punishment. After 3 hours he got the little tank going again. After crossing another ferry, the road turned for the worse. Soft sand and puddles, which helped the 3-ton MFB get beached. It was soon winched out by the little tank. The star of the show so far, however, was the little 2-wheel drive Caterham, which had only got stuck once. Hammond started to celebrate, as he had the best car for the terrain, sadly for him though.
This thing is unstoppable.
Karma hit and his front right track fell apart again. To get to their destination, which was 40 miles away, where the treasure was thought to be buried, Jeremy and James drove through the night. After 2 hours of punishment, they arrived at another ferry crossing, which just for luck had a broken engine, meaning they had to pull it across with a rope, and shortly after they found a hotel. Hammond's little Focus was fixed, but making rattles and bangs it shouldn't, and was slowly tearing itself to pieces. At 3 in the morning he arrived at the river crossing, however he had to use a canoe to retrieve the ferry. In the morning Richard had magically made it to the hotel, and his little car had both rear trailing arms snapped, which could cause the car to somersault if one of the tracks caved in. After some smooth roads and nice scenery, the trio arrived at a bigger ferry that would take them up the coast. When they landed in Antanaim, they camped and set off. The next morning they had to drive 15 miles to get to the treasure. After another small ferry and some little jokes, they found themselves on the road from hell. And unsurprisingly, the Ford's front right track had mangled itself. Even Jeremy admitted it was the worst road in the world. Because the tracks were ruined, Richard decided to put the little Ford back on wheels. After 2 hours of work, the Focus was ready. The big problem was that the tracks made up 90% of the ground clearance, so with the wheels back on, the Focus was back to a regular hot hatchback. After many miles, the astonishing Ford was soaking up the punishment. That night, Jeremy and James made camp, leaving Hammond to try to nurse his wounded little Focus to safety. The terrain got worse and worse, and as Richard was trying his best to keep the Ford alive, his wheel fell into a small hole, and as he drove out there was a jolt and a bang.
Oh, shit. Hold on. Hold on. Oh, shit.
The little Focus had met its maker and the clutch had gone.
I don't have a clutch. Pedal's stuck down. I'm done. That's it. It's a clutch. I can't mend the clutch.
This was the first car to ever die on a Grand Tour or Top Gear special. The next morning, Richard was walking and the other two were in their cars. Shortly after, the MFB had a coolant-related problem. If Jeremy couldn't fix it, the MFB would be out, leaving James to arrive first in his amazingly reliable little track toy. A few hours later, the big beast somehow arrived, showing that for once in his life Jeremy fixed something. After a massive hole was dug where the treasure should have been, in the middle of a football pitch, they figured out they should go to a place called Pirates Island. They boarded a ferry and left for the island. I am going to stop here so I don't spoil the end of the episode. But here is the thing: what happened to the Ford, Caterham and MFB? Well, the MFB has been spotted being driven by Clarkson around his hometown and his farm, indicating he kept the big beast. There isn't any information anywhere about the Caterham. But the Focus, that is where things get interesting. What did they do with it? Well, as we can see in this shot of them on their last ferry ride, the Focus is here being hidden by a light blue cover. So they couldn't have left it, they had to tow it all the way to the last destination. Comment down below if you want to see what happened to the Caterham and Focus in the future. Feel free to comment other topics related to cars and the Grand Tour or Top Gear. A video is ready about what happened to the bridge in Burma, so take a look at that when it's done.